During the Second World War, the infamous Nazi German U-boats, undersea boats, or fast attack submarines, were considered the scourge of the Atlantic Ocean. From battleships to merchant vessels en route to Britain, all sailed in constant fear of these underwater executioners. While the Allies eventually won the war on land, the success of the German U-boat campaign highlighted just how important and effective underwater warfare could be. Today we'll be looking at the top 7 most prolific and destructive U-boat commanders of the Second World War. Number 7. Karl Friedrich Murrin. 27 ships sunk in the course of 5 patrols. After a 10-year term on warships, Murrin joined the U-boat force in 1940. He operated all over the world patrolling the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Indian Oceans. One of his most notable victories came in the autumn of 1942, when he sunk more than 100,000 tons of shipping off South Africa. After the war, he salvaged sunken ships on the Rhine River with his colleague Lehman Villenbrock. Number 6. Heinrich Lieb Villenbrock. 25 ships sunk, 2 ships damaged over the course of 10 patrols. Lehman Villenbrock is the commander who served as the model captain in the classic film Das Boot. He started his naval career in 1931 after serving on multiple vessels. He transferred to the U-boat force in 1939. He had served on several successful U-boats, but one of his most notable patrols was in February of 1942, as it resulted in 7 ships sunk at a total of 49,000 tons. He would later become the commander of the 11th U-boat flotilla. After the war, Lehman Villenbrock worked at a marine salvage company, and in 1948, with 3 of his friends, he built a sailing ship. He went on to become the skipper of several merchant ships, eventually being named captain of the German nuclear research ship Otto Hahn. He died in 1986. Number 5. Victor Schutz. 35 ships sunk, 2 ships damaged over the course of 7 patrols. Schutz began his naval career in 1925. After serving several years on torpedo boats, he transferred to the U-boat force. His first successes were in the North Atlantic. Over the years, Schutz commanded multiple U-boats from the Portuguese coast to the Atlantic and African coasts. In 1943, he became the commander of the training flotilla in the Baltic. He died a year after the war. Number 4. Heinrich Lieb. 34 ships sunk, 1 ship damaged over the course of 9 patrols. Lieb began his naval career in 1927. In 1931, he was stationed on the battleship Schleswig-Holstein, transferring to the U-boat force in 1935. He was one of the few commanders that had a thorough pre-war training on U-boats, making it no surprise he ended up on this list. He served as a staff officer for the Naval High Command from 1941 until the end of the war. Number 3. Erich Tope. 35 ships sunk, 4 ships damaged over the course of 13 patrols. In 1934, Tope started his naval career by serving on a light cruiser until he joined the U-boat force. In 1937, he took command of U-57, a coastal U-boat which he successfully led for the next 3 years. However, that submersible sank in 1940 after colliding with a Norwegian ship. Later, Tope commissioned a larger U-boat called the Red Devil boat, in which he terrorized the North American coast. Eventually, he became commander of the training U-boat flotilla, then moved on and helmed the introduction of the Electro U-boat into service, a vessel that may well have won them the Battle of the Atlantic had it surfaced a few years earlier. After the war, Tope worked as a fisherman for several months, then an architect. In 1958, he joined the Federal German Navy and eventually became a staff member of NATO's military committee. He died in 2005. Number 2. Wolfgang Luth. 46 ships sunk, 2 ships damaged over the course of 16 patrols. The first U-boat officer to receive the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, Luth started his naval career in 1933. Up to that point, he had been studying law for 3 semesters. After spending several years on light cruisers, he transferred to the U-boat force in 1937. But it wasn't until 1940 that he saw his first successes as captain of a coastal U-boat, notably by sinking the French submarine Doris. Over the next few years, Luth sank multiple ships in the Indian Ocean and in African waters. One of his patrols lasted 205 days, the second longest recorded during the war. Unsurprisingly, he became adept at keeping crew morale high while at sea and implemented numerous ideas, such as a ship's newspaper, crew contests, and various other activities. His advice to other commanders has become a classic in the literature of long voyage health, morale, and team unity. After 5 years of uninterrupted duty, Luth shifted focus towards the Naval Academy, becoming the youngest commander of the German Naval Academy. He died a few days after the war ended when he failed to identify himself at night. In the darkness, he was shot in the head by a sentry. Number 1. Otto Kreshmer. 46 ships sunk, 5 ships damaged over the course of 16 patrols. The son of a schoolmaster, Otto joined the Reichsmarine as an officer candidate at the age of 18. After serving on a pocket battleship and light cruiser, he transferred to the U-boat force in 1936. He had received solid pre-war training on a U-boat, which made him a rarity among his peers. Following the outbreak of the war, he patrolled the North Sea. His first major success was the sinking of the Danish tanker Danmark, and soon after that, the British Destroyer HMS Daring. In 1940, he was upgraded to U-99 and became famous for his nighttime surface attacks. He was the tonnage king of the U-boat commanders. In 1941, on a 10-ship streak, a depth charge damaged his vessel. After surfacing, he scuttled the ship and managed to save 40 of his crew. He spent 6.5 years in Allied captivity. In 1955, after his release, he joined the Federal German Navy. By 1965, he had become the Chief of Staff at NATO's Allied naval forces in the Baltic Sea. He died in a hospital in Bavaria in 1998. Overall, German U-boats sank or destroyed a total of 3,304 Allied merchant ships and 262 Allied warships during the course of World War II. Their reign of terror cost upwards of 14 million gross tons in wreckage and over 70,000 Allied naval and merchant lives. To put that in perspective, the Normandy landing saw over 10,000 Allied deaths. At the Battle of Okinawa, the Allies suffered roughly 50,000 losses. Both battles being considered to be among the bloodiest and most brutal battles in recorded history. There were at least 5,000 Allied sailors killed in U.S. waters, which is twice the number lost in the attack on Pearl Harbor, and about 30% more than those killed in the 9/11 attacks. Ultimately, after a period of unfettered success, the British were able to come up with a number of countermeasures, including improved anti-submarine weapons and more effective radar systems. Tremendous leaps forward in technology were made by various codebreakers, which led to the eventual deciphering of the Nazi Enigma wheeled encryption machine. This became a fulcrum moment, which many considered the turning point of the war. During what the Germans call Black May of 1943, the Allies sunk 41 U-boats. This was the culmination of a steady counterattack since the cracking of the Enigma codes. At that point, Gross Admiral Karl Donitz, Supreme Commander of the Kriegsmarine U-boat arm, pulled back, stating, "We had lost the Battle of the Atlantic." Only 4 of the some 1,162 World War U-boats remain in existence today.
Check back every Tuesday for our latest episode, and be sure to like, share and subscribe to shipshape.pro.